Chris and Chris Talk Movies.
Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Chris Ferry, and of course, this is my co-host.
My name is Chris Huddleston.
And today we are both very excited to be talking to you about an animated feature, The Dark Knight Returns, Part 1 and 2.
Uno y dos.
Do you have a synopsis for us for both parts, Mr. Huddleston?
I do. I don't know if this synopsizes the whole thing, but
who cares?
If it doesn't, that's okay. Yeah. So this is a really brief one. Batman has not been seen for 10 years. A new breed of criminal ravages Gotham City, forcing 55-year-old Bruce Wayne back into the cape and cowl. But does he still have what it takes to fight crime in a new era? So this is, it's animated. So,
you know what I like about that is it doesn't tell you the whole story. What I don't like about that is there's a lot going on in these two films that I think if you hinted it, at least some of it would pique interest, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So we can do that as we go on.
As we talk about the film.
You have the main voice, you have Peter Weller as Batman, you have Bruce Wayne, you have Ariel Winter as Robin, and then a bunch of other people that are voice actors that I don't know who they are. So I don't want to give them short shrift or whatever, but all right. So I think this is the third time that I watched this. So, but this was the first time for you, right?
I think so. I might have watched part of it a while back because there was something when I was like, oh, it's Peter Weller, his voice. And then I thought, wait a minute, have I seen this? Or maybe I saw a part of it. There's a lot going on in these two movies. And as you mentioned last time when you recommended we check them out, there is a lot from the Dark Knight trilogy that Christopher Nolan did that I feel like is pulled, some of it almost directly from this, and certainly a lot of tonal elements, certain set pieces or shots. Not everything is in there, but he has a fight. So in the first movie, Gotham City has been kind of overrun by a band, a gang calling themselves the Mutants, whose boss looks like a big mutant. I don't know if he, but there's a lot. They have a fight that is very reminiscent of the Bane fight in the Nolan movies to me, where Batman kind of gets his clock cleaned. And then the second movie, it's the Joker. And I guess Two-Face comes into the second movie as well, right? But it's this idea of Batman is getting old, and he's not as fast as he used to be, and he's not recovering from the beatings he takes. His Batmobile is a huge armored tank thing that I think is kind of reminiscent of a lot of Nolan's hardware that he gives Batman. And of course, in the second movie, we have a Batman versus Superman that I think is pulled right from the DC films. Well, what was called Batman versus Superman, right?
They clearly use that. He builds a metal suit to fight Superman, and they use that in the Batman versus Superman film.
And of course, we spoil all of this. So if you're new to the podcast and you don't want us to spoil everything here, then turn it off. And he beats him. He beats Superman with some trickery, right? Mostly because Superman doesn't really want to kill Batman. Like, he's reluctant to kill Bruce Wayne on the orders. This was another thing, on the orders of Ronald Reagan, the whole thing that felt very Watchmen to me, didn't it?
Yeah.
Where the president is Superman sort of works for the United States now, which felt wrong to me. The idea of him as a U.S. agent instead of just some, like, Superman, the character seems morally above that to me, like, especially since Reagan is ordering him to do some almost mob style, you know what I mean? Like he's just a hitman kind of for Reagan. I'm like, that's Superman would do that.
Yeah, but him working for the United States, that goes back to the truth, justice, and the American way, and even
I don't because I didn't follow DC Comics, but tell me about
it. Well, that was the I think maybe they used that even in like old cartoons and things like that, but that was kind of the original thing. Was I don't know how much in the comics it was actually working for the president, but it was clearly he was American. He wasn't really like the world's hero or whatever necessarily. And even in the first, I don't know if it's the first, or I think it's the first Christopher Reeve movie, there's a part where, it's been so long since I've seen that, but like part of the White House gets destroyed or something like that, and he goes in and he has a big American flag and he says something to the president and stuff, so they've played off of that.
Oh, right. He puts the flag, mounts it back on the White House, right? He puts the flag back. I forgot all about that.
Yeah, so they've always done that to a degree, but that's what I think. So to give a little more context on where this came from, so this was a comic or graphic novel written and drawn by Frank Miller, and it came out in 1986. And like you were saying, almost everything starting from the 89 Batman of Tim Burton, all of the films have definitely been heavily influenced by this. I don't know about the newest one, The Batman. I don't know how much it was influenced, but like we said, you have the Batman versus Superman, you have the and just even the, this was kind of the beginning of Batman comics being really dark. Or it was, around this time, maybe like the mid 80s where that all started. But the thing that's cool about this is, and I read the Dark Knight Returns sometime in the 90s, like maybe the mid 90s or something like that. So like 10 or so years after it came out. But this is a direct adaptation where, I mean, the artwork is as close as possible to what, as they could to what the graphic novel looks like. And I didn't really go in and check to see if there were changes that were made, but like you said, it's Reagan in it. And there's one, so there become these kind of different factions of gangs. And there's one gang leader who's a woman called Bruno.
Oh, right.
She runs around without a top and has swastikas over her breasts. And it's like, that was something they could have been like, maybe we're not going to put this in, but it's like, they were just like, we are going to be as true as possible, to, which I think is really cool.
And it's funny because she's this swastika, obviously a German Nazi symbol,
Mm-hmm.
but otherwise she and her gang look like Red Army.
Yeah.
Like
they do.
She's got the blonde crew cut. She looks like Ivan Drago, basically, but a woman with the red like, gloves and everything in the army.
She looks
green
like Brigitte Nielsen from Rocky IV.
And none of that would have been accidental, right?
No,
I mean that would have all been very deliberately, but there was a lot going on with the
mm-hmm.
And there were a lot scare and the Nazi scare, and
there were a lot of, I think all the time. It's amazing. I guess like if you live long enough, just everything just continually repeats, is everything just on like a 30-year loop or something? I've thought about that just in general with like just world events. It's like, around the time when this came out, when we were kids, it was like, what were we worried about? The Russians and nuclear war, and it's like, we're back to Russians and nuclear war again. And also, at the time, a villain or a gang member or whatever with swastikas would have seemed kind of ridiculous then, because it's just like, oh, there aren't Nazis anymore, and it's like, hey, we've got Nazis again. You know what I mean? But there's a lot of commentary that he seems to be making in this. He definitely, it's just like, and they seem to do this with every iteration of Batman. And in the Batman, it's the same way, but it's just society, it's Gotham City. But I think for Frank Miller, Gotham City is kind of is society as a whole. And he seems to just be saying just everything's just going to hell. It's just terrible. And it's just crime everywhere and everything. And you have a few scenes with the Joker so he's, been in treatment for years and years in Arkham Asylum. And he has this psychiatrist who is this real, just like bleeding heart guy. And, he's treating the Joker with compassion and like thinks he's cured and all of this. And Frank Miller definitely seems to be saying they're like, this is idiotic. This is a deranged.
Takes him on a talk show, takes him out of Arkham so he could go do Conan or whatever.
Yeah. And it's
not Conan, but it is Conan's voice.
It is Conan's voice. Yeah. And then the Joker kills that guy.
Kills everybody.
Coffee mug. Yeah. He kills everybody. So, he definitely seems to have some views on crime and rehabilitation and things like that. Also with Reagan, it's funny because there's one I made a note of the line because I thought it was really funny. But there's one part where Reagan is addressing the public. It's like Russia has invaded some country, and the United States is maybe going to intervene or whatever. And Reagan says, we have to protect our interests. And then he goes, stand up for freedom, and so
subtle.
Yeah, subtle. But, he obviously, it's kind of interesting because in recent years, some people kind of in the comic books industry and even fans got kind of upset with Frank Miller with some of his political views because it seemed he'd gotten like real right wing. And I don't know specifically what that was about, but he doesn't seem to like Reagan very much, so it's not necessarily like he was a right winger at the time.
Right.
Or it could just be criticism of the government in general. I don't know, but I thought that line was really funny. And then you have, I laughed, I don't know if it's supposed to be funny or not, but there's one scene where, so Reagan basically tells Superman that he's going to have to deal with Batman. And so Superman goes to Clark Kent, and he's standing there he has this white, almost like a blouse on, and it's unbuttoned all the way down, and a bald eagle comes and lands on his arm. It's like, that just cracked me up. It's just like, he's the ultimate symbol of America and patriotism, and I just thought that was really funny.
But that's really evocative of like Russian pop art, propaganda art too, that the kind of figure with the bird and the open shirt, the kind of peasant shirt, like sort of communist Superman, Übermensch.
Yeah.
I guess Germany also.
That's Germany. Yeah, Germany has the same stuff. Every country uses their propaganda in kind of a similar way.
There was a theme running through this where the Law and Order people were anti-Batman because he's a vigilante and he's operating outside the law. And then the defenders of Batman saying he's standing up. Right. I mean, the police here who condemn Batman haven't been able to get crime under control in this city. And I think at one point, one character says, if you went as hard after the criminals as you went after Batman, it wouldn't be such a problem. But Batman is showing us that we can stand up for ourselves. We don't have to like sit here wringing our hands while the police are ineffective. We can not take it anymore.
Right.
And that's a debate that shows up again and again. And Commissioner Gordon retires and is replaced by a younger commissioner. And she really has it in for Batman, to the point where she just opens fire on him. Like, they spot him at this one place and she just, they go freeze and she just bam, 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 starts firing at him. Like, I'm pretty sure that's not standard procedure. Like, he hasn't attacked them or anything.
Yeah.
Just shoot to kill. That's just how it's going. Well, he got the message, but I wonder if people came down on Frank, what's his face?
Frank Miller.
For becoming too right wing. It may be that the core of that is basically like, you have to stand your ground. You have to, you have to take the law into your own hands. Like, I can see how the kernel of that might translate into something that. It's funny because I don't understand what conservatism has become in this country. I get that it's based on this, like, you have to, it's not worth anything if you don't do it for yourself. Like, America is the greatest country because everybody has the opportunity, but I pulled myself up by my bootstraps, right? Which is absurd. That's impossible. It's cartoon logic. And everybody else should too. And these entitlement programs just make us want to be lazy, weak, handout takers. And I mean, for me, there's just so many flaws with that way of thinking that I can't get my head around it. But I will say now, in these crazy, confusing times, all of the issues seem up in the air. And I think it's easier to see both sides of some issues. Not that there are very decent people on both sides per se, but that you can start to be like, well, wait a minute. I know some very decent people that espouse these things that I think on the face of it is despicable. So how'd that happen? Like, what's really going on there? Because I don't think they think of themselves as despicable people.
No, nobody does. I mean,
how are they seeing that as the right and proper way forward? And how do they see the things that I think? I wouldn't describe myself as the most progressive person on the planet, but I'm generally progressive. How do they see? I mean, to them, there's a radical arm of the left that is, as bad as Adolf Hitler, the marching socialism that want to turn America into, communist Russia or something. And I don't see that at all. Like, I don't see how you make any kind of an argument out of even the most extreme proposals that the most liberal proposals people are making doesn't approach that.
No,
at all for me. So I don't.
No, not at all. And I think that's an interesting thing with this film and this book, that it was written in the 80s, but I think those continuing scenes of these like news talk shows where they're arguing, and like you were talking about, you have the two different sides, are very true to what's going on today. And if there were, and if we had actual superheroes in real life, particularly a Batman type, a vigilante type guy, this would be exactly what some people would be saying. They'd be like, the police either won't do their job or they can't do their, the police want to do their job, but their hands are tied by the mayors or whatever, the liberal mayors. And Batman can go out and do the stuff that, the authorities are either too scared to do or won't do because they'll get in trouble or whatever. I mean, just guaranteed there would be people, Tucker Carlson would be saying that, be like, Batman, he's great, he kills, he fights the bad guys, and the cops aren't allowed to because Joe Biden won't let them, or whatever.
Well, generally Batman doesn't kill people either, right? I mean, he
I kind of misspoke with the killing, but
in this he does, right?
Yeah, he does.
Well, the Joker kind of kills himself, but doesn't he kill the mutant boss? I don't remember.
He either kills him or he's, and he breaks a lot of bones and stuff. And we don't really see what happens to them, but he either hurts or kills cops too later when they're, when it's in that like tunnel of love and they open fire on him and he's throwing explosives at him and stuff. Like, we don't know if they get killed or.
It actually degenerates into kind of open warfare in these movies, which I thought was interesting. There's a lot of things here that push boundaries to me. There's a Robin character that I thought was really interesting. It's a girl who is just sort of a fan, just sort of fills the role voluntarily. And rather than Batman saying, get out of here, kid, you're going to get hurt, accepts her and like teaches her, like, and Alfred is like, remember what happened to Master Grayson or whatever, because apparently the Robin, and this is a reality in which why he quit being Batman was Robin got killed, right?
Mm-hmm. That actually happened in the comics. I think the Joker killed him. So that's why he's retired, and he's coming back now, and taking on a new Robin who, although willing and volunteering, is very young, and it's edgy. There's a number of times when in the show it shows how dangerous what they're doing is, and you think, I mean, that's a pretty strong stance to take, because it's pretty it's pretty irresponsible. You take a kid and you're like, all right, kid, you want to fight? I'll teach you how to fight. You're like, well, hang on a second. Yeah.
What is she, 13? I mean, 16 maybe?
Well, and also the fact, I don't remember at the time, because like I said, I didn't really read this when it came out. It wasn't until years later that I read it. But I don't know if there was controversy back then about Robin being a girl, this particular Robin being a girl, but it would be one of those things today where it would be like, Robin's a boy. This is, they're just giving in to the woke mob or whatever. And there was no woke mob in 1986,
right.
So I think
that didn't bother me. What,
it didn't bother me. I just think it's interesting that,
people
more than 30 years ago that he was like, oh, I'm going to have a girl be Robin.
In the original red and green and yellow outfit, with the little mask, right? Yeah. But this Robin kicks ass. Like, I'm like, who trained you as a ninja? Like, you were a school kid when we met you, and then you got interested, you got inspired by Batman enough to go out and like start vigilanteing yourself, like kick ass. But in short order, she's like taking out bad guys with just her fists and feet. And I'm like, you don't just know how to do that. That's some serious martial artistry.
Yeah.
I mean, I went with it fine, but I was just kind of like,
that's where you get into some.
Did we miss a montage here or something? Anyway, and then there was some other interesting stuff, like the Joker has a couple of poisonous robots that look like little kids. I didn't understand that in the least. It seems strange to me, but
yeah.
And out of nowhere, the Joker also has like a guy in the chair. Like, he's got the guy who designs the robots and makes the poison. He's like, oh, I've been waiting for you to get out.
Yeah.
And he's out there fighting alongside of him. Like, who is this guy?
I don't know if some of that had been introduced in other comics. I don't know, but yeah. But we talked about the Batman versus Superman film, and this is the thing, and I've talked about this before, but why with the films they've done so much taking bits and pieces from different, different comics, different comic runs, different creators, when they could just adapt. Like when they did Batman versus Superman, why did they not just do a straight adaptation of this comic? I mean, you could have taken Reagan out of it and put it like a generic president in it to make it 2015 or whenever that movie came. You know what I mean? I guess maybe
I think it would have been
Batman
cool
versus...
if you kept it Reagan. Like,
or yeah.
I was watching part of
the...
Inglourious Bastards the other day, and you know what happened? I don't want to spoil that. We're not doing that episode, but that ending defies history that I think even the uneducated are like, that's not what happened, but it's enormously satisfying in the world that the movie creates. And then you think sort of like, I don't know, you're making a movie that's basically exploitation pulp. Like, why not have whatever happened you want? Like, what are movies about? Are movies sort of about wish fulfillment in some way? And then you think, early on, you're like, well, you can't have a different guy play Hulk. We already had him. What? Now there was like, how many 8 Hulk movies? Like, I don't know. People don't care. Just make it. No. I don't know. Make it better. Make it better than the other one, and people will watch it.
And it works, especially like what DC is doing now, where they're just like, yeah, we're just gonna have like 7 different guys play Batman.
Just kind of one-offs. We're just exploring the property in different angles. It's
and
working
the comics always did that. They had. They changed writers all the time and artists.
There was no canon. There was no, because there were so many. Even simultaneously, there would be different titles. It'd be like Batman, Dark Knight, The Gray Knight, Bat Knight, Bat.
Spider-Man. They had the Amazing Spider-Man.
So many. Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man,
and all that. And you have with this, with the style of Frank Miller, his art style, everybody's like real blocky. Everybody kind of looks like a linebacker. Even like
huge.
Yeah.
Even the Joker. The Joker to me was always a spindly guy. A scarecrow of a guy.
Big wide shoulders. This big back and everything. And so you have, you have Batman. Like I said, just very blocky. He's just like a big rectangle almost. Whereas the Batman comics that I remember reading growing up as a kid, Batman was real lean, and he had they had the, like in the 70s, it was the real long ears, that were about a foot off of his, I call them ears, but the pointy part, like going up off the top of his head and everything. So
ears,
but ears. But I like that with the live action films, that they're basically saying, we're just going to do all these different, it's multiverse stuff or whatever. But the other hand of that, I don't know why. It's just like, this is just already written for you. I mean, I think this is a really well written, and it's exciting, and it's 2.5 hours. But did you feel like it was slow or draggy or anything?
No. I mean, part of that's just that it's a cartoon. So, I mean, I don't want to say my brain doesn't invest in it in the same way, but there is not the depth of detail, visual detail, that in, say, the Del Toro movies we've been watching. Sure. Like, I feel like you could pause the frame in the Del Toro, in the psychiatrist's office, for example, and just examine all the stuff that's in that room. And it's not arbitrary, there's nothing arbitrary in there. So, not that an animator doesn't do this, but an animator, and certainly in this film, there isn't the detail. That guy in the background might be wearing a watch, but that guy in the background isn't necessarily important. What's important, the depth of importance, is there's a guy in the background that just got out of the way. So the message is, with this action of our protagonist or whatever, a bystander was almost killed. And maybe that bystander is dressed, maybe it's a banker, or maybe it's a homeless guy, but it doesn't go, it's not, there's no more depth of detail than that, really. Yeah. And so it stays, it stays 2-dimensional. in a way that I think is just easier on my mind. I can sort of soak
I
it
know
up.
what you mean.
Like,
Yeah,
cool.
I felt the same way. That said, I think this is good animation. So DC, they make several of these a year, and
not all are as good as others.
yeah, some
The
of them
vocal
are
performances are excellent too. I mean,
yeah,
I think Peter Weller's a great. I would never think of him
a
as Batman.
really
He
good
does
choice,
a great
right?
job.
Yeah.
Great job.
Yeah, he's excellent. All of the voice work in this is great. Every the I really liked Commissioner Gordon and the Joker. It's a different Joker from the Mark Hamill one that we've seen a lot.
Yeah, it's the guy from Lost. I don't know if you watched Lost, but
I did.
with
Yeah,
the
I
sort of
watched all of
spectacles,
it.
he has this sort of a And he was really on that show. He was really infuriating on that
a
show.
really creepy guy.
Bring
Yeah,
some
and
of that.
infuriating.
Bring some of that to this.
Yeah. So yeah, they're not. You can tell that just it's seemingly everybody who was involved with this wanted to do the comic justice. And like I say, there may be some small changes that they made that I just don't remember, but it's a really straight adaptation of that, which again, I don't know why they just don't do that with the live action movies.
Yeah.
It's just like it just takes so much work away from you. I mean, you basically, you barely would have to write a script,
Yeah, I'm not sure that everything in it would translate to live action.
No.
I don't think those like Poison, Raggedy Ann, and Raggedy Andy robots work. I don't know.
And it definitely doesn't work in the like you talked about with Nolan. The fight with the mutant is kind of like Bane. Bane makes a lot more sense in the Nolan universe. If you had this mutant guy, he probably wouldn't have the jagged teeth and all that kind of stuff. That just kind of doesn't fit in the Nolan universe. This is dark, but there are still some of that is kind of silly with the mutants and things, although still kind of,
but they are a vicious and violent nihilistic gang. Like you don't see it, but the acts that they're clearly about to commit before being stopped are just ice cold, not just murder, but like cruel and torturous rape, mutilation. They're just one of their slice and dice is one of the things they say is this sort of, it reminded me very much of the gang in Clockwork Orange.
Exactly. I definitely nihilism. Think he was going for that for sure. Cause they have their own way of talking, and
so that was unsettling for sure. You're like, somebody's got to stop these guys. And everyone's so furious about Batman, but at least as it's shown in this movie, he does seem to be the only one who's doing anything that's even remotely effective against stopping a scourge. I mean, there's an army there. It's not just a little rabble. It's like every scene on the street, there's a few of these mutant people hanging, like every scene, like Jesus, like cockroaches are everywhere. They have kind of Cyclops visors on. They have that red band.
It does look like Cyclops. But yeah, and some of the other, they did DC did an adaptation of The Killing Joke. I don't know if you ever read that one or not. That's
I didn't read it. I watched that, and that got a lot of acclaim, but I didn't enjoy watching that animated movie as much as I liked these.
Now with it, the comic is pretty short, and they added a lot of new stuff to it. So I remember however long, 5 or so years ago that came out. It
changes the origin story of the Joker as we know it, doesn't it? He's a failed comedian, basically.
Yeah. Which they kind of use that in Joker, the movie.
Right. He doesn't fall into a vat of acid.
No. But as I remember with that, there were people who were, people are always going to be upset no matter what. But there were people that were critical of it because they added in all this new stuff just kind of to increase the, to make it a feature length story, I think. And some people didn't like, I remember liking it, but I don't remember a whole lot about it. But I read that one also.
I like the origin story of the Joker falling into a big vat of like industrial solvent and coming out with his face is his skin's all bleached out and his hair's green, and that isn't costumery that he does that, and he's totally bonkers.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the comic book, the permanent grin was also part of like the chemical effect, and of course in Burton's Batman, it's a bad plastic surgeon trying to repair his face, and that's as good as he can get.
Yeah,
there's something so primary colors and comic booky about an origin story like that then to sort of make it all psychological and be like, well, no, he's a failed comedian. I just kind of like big vat of acid. You go into, there's a transformative moment. Like he's a bad guy, but then there is this transformative moment where he emerges, instead of dying, he emerges as something. The butterfly comes out of the, as something totally new.
Mm-hmm.
And that really fits in the Batman universe. Two-Face, I feel like there's a lot. Batman himself, right, falls down the well. The bats is this idea of the other side of the coin, right? What that which didn't kill us made us stronger, but it also made us something totally bizarre. Yeah. I feel like that's one of the things I love about the Batman franchise. And you can't have a thing run decades and decades and decades without it evolving. But I kind of like that original Tim Burton Batman, that it stuck with that idea of there being a kind of a grisly transformative moment that not only made the hero, but made the villains.
Oh, yeah. And I think to me, the best superhero movies, comic book movies, if you try to make it too realistic and too serious, it sucks some of the fun out of it to me. The falling in the vat of acid thing couldn't happen, in real life in that way. But in a comic book, it works. And to try to, I don't know. I just think some of the enjoyment is stripped away when you try to make it too much.
And that enjoyment, that fun stays in the Burton one. I mean, it is macabre for sure. It does touch on the macabre, but he's got, he has an electrifying hand buzzer that it kills people high voltage. And there's the scene where Batman gets away and the Jack Nicholson Joker's like, where does he get those wonderful toys? He's so jealous.
Well, and they have the thing that, maybe taken from this where we see this when you were talking about when he's at the Conan O'Brien thing and the things fly over and it releases this gas and it causes everybody to have the Joker smile.
Yeah.
And they do that in the 89 with Smilex,
Yeah. That's right.
That was another thing that I imagine was just borrowed, straight from this.
Yeah.
One thing I will say, and I don't want to give anything away with the Batman since you haven't seen it yet, but I would like, it would be fine if they would do a Batman movie where they just don't even talk about his parents. It's just like, God, what I mean? He's in this, he's 55 and he's still, And how old was he? Like 8 or 10 or something.
I was just having that thought. I was just having that thought about the Nolan ones. It's like, we all know the origin story. We don't need to see it again. How many Batman movies have we watched? Like, does anybody just want a Batman? Wonder what that's about. Everybody gets it. And I like that he didn't. I like that he didn't have a Joker origin in his second film. I like that part of that vision of the Joker is it's almost purely nihilistic. Like there is no Joker's lair. He doesn't have an army of, right? That's all too organized. He's not, you know what I mean? And we don't have that origin story because that's scarier. And he's really just supposed to be so unpredictable that it's super scary. And I thought that was effective. I don't think we needed Bane's origin story.
No.
Right? It didn't really explain anything. We get that he's this big jacked up guy and he's wearing some sort of a mask. All of that's creepy. I mean, what I love with the Joker is he explained different times how he got his smile, and it was a different story every time, right? And you realize, this is not a guy who's going to tell you the truth about anything. Like that's not what he does.
And, I was reading the origin stuff, and, some of that is that, movies are being made for China now.
Yeah.
And in some cases they haven't seen the 9 movies that came before. But I imagine at this point, people in China know the Batman origin story and they know the Spider-Man origin story. But when the Batman came out, I was just reading, people's comments about it. And there were some people that were talking about, that Justice League wasn't very good. And they said, and there were people like, well, they didn't set it up. They didn't do all the other origin movies. And it's like, do they, I mean, if they could have just done Justice, it's just like everybody knows Batman, everybody knows Superman, everybody knows Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
And even if you could, I mean, I think that the general public knows who the Flash is, but all you have to do is just be like, he runs fast.
Right.
I mean, it's like that
makes me think of that. There's a scene in Ultron, which is not the best of the Avengers movies, where Captain America is talking to not Agent Coulson. I forget what her character's name is, but she's basically Nick Fury's right hand.
Yeah. Woman. I can't think of what her name is either.
And they've encountered the Red Witch and Quicksilver on the battlefield.
Oh, Quicksilver. Yeah.
And she's explaining that they're enhanced. And he's like, what's their deal? And he's like, well, she's got paranormal, and he explains, and he's got a metabolic, process that exceeds whatever. And Captain America stops and looks at her like, in English, please. And and she takes a minute and she's like, he's fast and she's weird.
Yeah.
That's all you need. You don't need,
especially with
he's a big guy, can turn into metal, right? This guy's got claws and he heals when you hurt him. Like, it's all baloney. How much do you need to know?
And I've probably said this a dozen times on the show, but you go to the original Star Wars and there wasn't a bunch of setup with all the, Luke's the farm boy.
Exactly.
He's the chosen one. He goes to a bar and, he has Obi-Wan Kenobi, who's the good old wizard. He goes to a bar and meets Han Solo, who's a pirate. The rogue guy. We don't have a flashback to him when he was a kid or him robbing somebody or whatever. And then you've got a princess. We don't need to know. She's a princess.
We've got princess.
He's the princess. We've got Darth Vader. He's the evil wizard.
So he's the Dark Knight, right? He's the Black Knight.
So you didn't have to have, eventually we got these, but you didn't, going into that movie, nobody was just like, man, I don't, what's going on? I'm confused. You know what I mean? It's
right.
Like, if only we would had 7 other movies to explain who these characters are. No.
When I was a kid, the biggest confusing thing for me was like the bad guys wore white outfits and the good guys wore black and gray. And I was like, wait, aren't they the good guys? Why are they not wearing white?
I guess that was so Darth Vader stood out as really, really bad in the all black,
Well, and Princess Leia's wearing white.
Yeah, that's true.
You get your main chess pieces are the color that you would expect them to be in an old black and white Western.
Prior to the Avengers, I would argue that the general public didn't know the Avengers characters nearly as well as the Justice League characters. I mean, everybody knew the Incredible Hulk because of the Lou Ferrigno show, you know. Right. But the general public didn't know. I mean, I know they made it, you know, they made a couple of movies with Iron Man, but that when Iron Man was made, that was viewed as a big gamble because people didn't, it was like, people don't know this character, you know.
We don't really need the origin story of Iron Man, though, really.
No.
Really. I
He's
mean,
a rich guy that, you know.
Spider-Man is the one Marvel character with an origin story that feels like a DC origin story. You know, he got bitten by a radioactive spider. He's a high school kid. And that, you know, gamma ray radioactive spider gave him spider powers. And that's as deep as you don't need a whole movie about that, although they've done a few of them.
Yeah.
Have you seen Spider-Man?
I still haven't. And I was just reading today about
talk about Spider-Man.
I was just reading today that it's hitting streaming. And I was like, oh, great. I'll watch it on Disney Plus. Well, it's a Sony movie. Sony is, you know, it was a joint venture with Sony, but Sony owns it. So it won't go on Disney Plus. It's going to, at some point, it's going to be on Netflix because they made a deal with Netflix. But right now it's like you have to pay $20 to see it or whatever. So I'll wait a little while until.
I thought it was a lot of fun considering I am starting to experience fatigue with these comic book movies. Just no matter how good they are, it is all one. You know, they're all variations on chocolate ice cream. It's like you can only eat so much. I love it. There's only so much chocolate ice cream you can eat before you start getting a little tired of it. And I think the new Doctor Strange looks like it might be interesting. I can't say that I'm excited about it. You know, it's like
I would say
I want to see the Batman, but I'm not.
Yeah. Here's what I would say
about it.
Here is what I would say about the Batman. And I've talked to a couple of other people who are kind of in the same boat with the superhero fatigue. The Batman feels like a movie. Whereas the Marvel films, even the really great ones, feel like disposable entertainment. You know, that it's just like I'm going to watch this one and then I'm going to watch
like a roller coaster ride. And then if you own the ride, you're like, oh, I want to go ride that one again. And you do, and you go, whoo, still fun.
You know, the Nolan Dark Knight movie, even though I have criticisms of it, but that's a movie that 20 years from now, people will still be watching. And as just, this is a really great film. Whereas I don't know that these Marvel and a lot of the, you know, stuff like Aquaman, stuff like that. Is anybody going to care about these movies in 20 years beyond, oh, I saw that when I was a kid and I have nostalgia.
But Aquaman was terrible. And I like Jason Momoa. I like the actor.
Yeah.
Whereas I thought the Wonder Woman movie was not terrible. It wasn't, it's not going to go down in the great whatevers. It was corny, but it was fun. And Aquaman was just a series of like, what is happening? Like, who decided this?
I thought Aquaman was borderline unwatchable.
They're all sitting there. There's a scene where they're having a face off, and one half of the army is on seahorses, giant seahorses, and the other army is on sharks. And the thought I had was, there's too much to start with here, but the first thing that hits me in the face is, that's not how sharks work. I mean, I don't care how much you control. Like, sharks are the animals that can't stop moving forward because they can't respirate. They propel themselves through the water so that the water passes through. They can't sit still while they're waiting for you to charge. Those sharks, my friend, are suffocating. You're suffocating those sharks.
And, you know, you've got Willem Dafoe in it. And, you know,
they must have paid him a lot of money because
that movie made almost $1.2 billion, you know, and it's just, and, you know, of course, another one's being made because
it made $1.2 billion.
Yeah, because it made $1.2 billion. So I don't know. But like I say, when I can't wait till you see it so we can talk about it. But the Batman, it feels like a film and not just like, oh, we're just setting up something else,
Right.
where
Right.
they're and again, I enjoy the Marvel movies, but they're just kind of like modern day serials or something. You know what I mean? Where it's just like you go and then, oh, this I got a cliffhanger for the next thing, and
I think that the first 10 years of the MCU was quite a feat of filmmaking to take material this silly and somehow get audiences invested in over the size of the tapestry that wove with the number of different characters. But now that now that we've had some main characters retire from it, and we're sort of looking at this sort of quote unquote phase 2 or whatever they're calling it,
getting into the B and C characters.
You run a marathon and you think that was amazing. I can't believe I did it. And, I know some people do this. This is a bad metaphor, but you can't just then run another marathon and then just run a third one. You just keep running.
Mm-hmm.
It's exhausting. Like you did it. Now do something new. Don't just do more with different people because it feels watered down. And I like the people, right? I mean, I like the Scarlet Witch. I liked that TV show. I liked some of the weird stuff, fun they had with that. But you can't just metastasize that endlessly forever.
They're going to try.
They're doing it. They're doing it.
That all said,
but I'm not watching it.
I'm going to watch I haven't watched all the shows. I've really only Scarlet Witch, the Vision and Scarlet Witch WandaVision was really the only one that I watched all the way through.
Loki was kind of fun sometimes.
I started it and I started it and I never finished it.
Oh, there you go.
I enjoyed what I watched. Yeah, I need to go back. But I am going to watch Moon Knight because that was a comic that I really liked as a kid. And so I'm kind of cautiously optimistic that because it could be kind of different. But
who is playing that?
It's Oscar
Isaac.
Yeah, which he's really good.
Yeah, he's really good.
But there was
a hard one. Moon Knight's a hard one to do. Moon Knight's weird.
It's real weird, yeah. And it was always kind of labeled as a Batman ripoff, but it's just like Batman, but he just wears white, and it's really not. I mean, there's quite a bit of because he's insane. I mean, it's not just, and he has multiple personalities, so it's not just the bat. He dresses up like somebody else. He's insane. So. Did you watch Legion on FX? Did we ever talk about that?
You
know what? Yeah, we did talk about it. I watched, what was it, like 3 seasons?
Yeah.
I definitely watched the first season and maybe some of the second season. I really liked it.
The first season was really strong, and the second season got really mired down in its own. It was kind of chasing its own tail, and
it was slow.
It carried that into the third season, but it did finish strong. I think by the time they realized, okay, there's not going to be a season 4 of this, we need to drive this home. It came back into focus and it finished strong.
It was a
neat
show.
Yeah, whether or not I thought the first season was great. There was so much style. And then season 2 was all style and no substance. And you're like, really, I think I might just turn this off. I was watching it at the gym. So I was like, if I turn it off, I'm just going to be staring at the treadmill readout. Yeah. I don't have anything else to watch.
Yeah. I enjoyed the direction of it. And, he's a good actor and all that.
So, and they had fun with how weird that character is. And
yeah.
Anyway. Yeah. So about this, it sounds like you would recommend it.
Yeah, I think, this isn't going to be for everybody because it's funny. I was reading reviews on Amazon, and there are all these people who had like either rented it or bought the actual, movie, and they were mad because they didn't know it was animated. They thought it was, I think they thought it was going to be the dark, the Nolan Dark Knight. They're like, this is a cartoon. I thought this was going to be, real. So there are some people that would probably never watch this because it's animated, but I mean, I would say this is one of the best Batman films, period.
Yeah, I don't know
think
that
it's
I would
really
agree with
well
that.
done.
It's certainly, of all the many, many, many Batman animated films and DC animated films, this is one of my favorite of those.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're into animated, like literal cartoon movies,
And if you ever read the comic and were into it,
Yeah.
I think you would just eat this up, because it's
Yeah.
just such a, just a straight adaptation of it. They did a really great job, I feel. So yeah, I would recommend it. If you don't like superheroes, you're not gonna like this.
yeah, I have to be in the mood to watch an animated movie, and that
Mhm.
even goes for Pixar. Like, there's just almost a different gear in my mind for
I'm the same. Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, animation, that'd be cool, or not tonight. So
Yeah.
I mean, if you know that this is a cartoon, it's an animated film, and you're into Batman, I'd be like, yeah, this is one of the best of, if not the, I haven't watched them all, so I don't feel like I'm
There's a
qualified to be like,
gazillion
this is
of
the
them.
best. I know
Yeah.
there's so many.
Some are good, some are not.
Chris and Chris talk movies at gmail.com. If you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you are listening to us on the podcast, hello. Thanks for listening. What are we going to do next time? We've talked about a number of things.
Are we going to do Birdman?
I think I do want to do Birdman. Last time I looked, there's nowhere free to stream it, so that's a rental if you're okay with that.
That's fine. And for people who haven't seen Birdman, it is not a superhero movie. It is Michael Keaton, who had played a superhero named Birdman. He's an actor in the film,
right?
So it's
absurd,
not really about
and it's magical realism, and it's just it's just a little bit of everything. I guess it's a drama more than anything else, but it is about an actor like Michael Keaton, who got famous for playing a character like Batman called Birdman, and now is trying to kind of reignite his career, and has mental health things he's going through. And I remember seeing it when it came out and walking out of there being like, wow. I haven't seen it since, and I don't know, all this Batman stuff has made me want to revisit something that is clearly capitalizing on the superhero movie thing, but it is not a superhero movie.
And it takes place mostly, or maybe even entirely, within so he's acting in a play, and it's a theater, and movies that, that's a subgenre of a subgenre, I guess, but movies that take place in the theater, I've always found really interesting.
Yeah, it is really interesting. It doesn't all take place. They go to the bar and he's outside.
Yeah, that's true.
But a lot of it,
mostly,
he's deciding he wants to produce himself in this Broadway drama. And there's a lot of skepticism because, the Birdman guy is doing this, right? So, and he's taking big risks, and he feels like it's his whole career on the line, and he's a little bit nuts anyway. And I guess he's got a daughter, and there's a relationship thing with his daughter, and it's a lot. But there's also, what I love about it is there is this sort of magical realism that, not unlike some of the stuff that Del Toro plays with, that I think it just is woven so well. I'm eager to see if I enjoyed it now as much as I did then. You've never seen it? You have?
No, I think I've seen it a couple of times. I definitely saw it. I didn't see it in the theater
more than me,
but I saw it when it first came out on video or whatever. And I watched it another time at some point, but it's been several years since I've seen it.
I think, if memory serves, Michael Keaton had sort of had been away. He hadn't been doing much, and so this was him kind of coming back to the screen. And of course, he's been doing a lot of stuff since then. But so there's that double harmonic of like casting Michael Keaton as a guy that played a big popular role and then sort of vanished, and Michael Keaton being a guy that played a big popular role and sort of vanished. It was meta in that
Exactly.
way to great effect, if I remember correctly. So why don't you join us and check out Birdman, especially if you haven't seen it. I think it's well worth watching.
Absolutely.
And that's what we'll do for next time. Do you have
Sounds
anything
wonderful.
else you want to add? For the
I don't think so.
All right. Well, then, on that note, we will talk to you next week.